out of slavery, free them from the Pharaoh to let them starve to death. God will allow situations where it looks impossible so he can show us his supernatural provision. Don't be surprised if you face times where all the facts say there's no way. Your resources are limited. You fished all night and caught nothing. No, God is up to something. He didn't bring you this far to leave you. God told Moses to take his staff and strike a rock. When he did, out in the desert, water started pouring out of the rock. Supernatural provision. God can make things happen that defy the odds. Things that you couldn't plan for. You have to trust him. Everything in your mind will tell you you'll never have abundance. You'll always be thirsty. You'll always struggle, have debt, not enough. That may be true logically speaking. What I'm saying is God will defy logic. He knows how to bring water out of a rock. The scripture says he makes streams in the barren places, rivers in the desert. There may be some things barren in your life. You don't see how it could ever change. No, get ready. God's about to strike the rock. You're going to see provision that you can't explain. But guess what you got to do? Good breaks that don't make sense. Increase that's not logical. The same God that brought water out of a rock can cause promotion to find you. You got to put income into this clown to get God out. To come knocking on your door. If we could do this all in our own strength, we wouldn't need God's help. But God on purpose will put dreams in your heart that you can't accomplish. And so will Satan. What's your point? You don't have the resources, the funds, the connections. It's easy to get discouraged and let what we see in the natural talk us out of it. Guys in the mob, he's a pimp, what? And say, God, I believe you have supernatural provision, that you have net-breaking blessings, that you can still bring water out of a rock. Bankroll me so I can put an addition on, asshole. Even to have children for a long time with no success. And after much prayer and fertility treatment, she became pregnant with triplets. They were so excited, but during the pregnancy, there were complications. The babies were born prematurely, weighing less than a pound each. They had to stay in the neonatal intensive care for 6 months. By the grace of God, they grew, and today they're perfectly healthy. These parents had insurance, but it didn't cover everything. A few months after they brought their children home, they received a bill for $2 million. The father was a police officer. Mom worked in education. In the natural, they'd be paying on that bill the rest of their life. But God knows how to bring water out of a rock. He knows how to cause the fish to find you. Police officer and a teacher. They didn't get discouraged. Got some credits. Thanking God for supernatural provision. Declaring what he promised. We will lend and not borrow. We're buying our vets. We're buying people houses. That we have more than enough. That you take pleasure in prospering us. If you're going to see God's blessings, you have to have an abundant mentality. You have to know that he's Jehovah Jireh, the Lord your provider. That phrase comes from when Abraham was on top of Mount Moriah, about to sacrifice his son Isaac. Right before he went through it, an angel appeared and told him to stop. It was a test of his obedience. He needed an animal to sacrifice. He heard this noise in the brush. He looked over and saw this ram caught in the thicket. He took that ram and it became the sacrifice. Abraham named that place Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide. Love animals toward human race. Why sacrifice anything? That high up in the mountains, but God knows how to get the provision to you. The ram was waiting on Abraham. It was going up the mountain before Abraham even knew he needed it. So he could be sacrificed. God has some rams waiting for you. He's already lined up your provision, your abundance. Before you had the setback, he put the ram in place. Maybe you grew up in a family of lack and struggle. Don't worry, rams are in your future. They look like your stuff. You don't have the funding for your dream. How can you expand your business? Stay encouraged. A ram will be waiting for you. Dodge, what do you got? The Lord your provider has already put the abundance, the good breaks, the supernatural provision. It's already in your path. That's why we can stay in peace. He's the Lord, our provider. Not our job, our provider. Our boss, our provider. Our salary, our provider. No, the God who spoke worlds into existence. The God who makes streets out of gold. The God who causes fish to show up. The God who brings water. I see no streets out of gold and I got no fish showing up. The God who said you'll lend and not borrow. The God who said your cup will run over. That's who's ordering your steps. That's who's planned out your
Your government will lend
Now, you may know him
and borrow from us.
That's the most important. You may know him as your healer. That's good, but you
In
need to
God
know
we
him as
trust.
your provider. He has supernatural provision.
In God we trust.
Triplets. They didn't see how it could ever work out, but they just kept standing in faith, believing that God would make a way. Right before Christmas that year, the hospital called and said, we've never done this before, but we've decided to cancel your $2 million debt. Like Peter, they were awestruck. They didn't see that coming. Like with Abraham, that was a ram waiting for them. You don't know what God